Well, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here, and an even greater pleasure to be in conversation with my friend Mohan right here. So let me start by first congratulating you, Mohan, on really writing such a great book. And I am convinced, I'm impressed just by the fact that you completed it, because for the last several years, I've been contemplating writing a book, and I keep asking our common friend Kiran Karnik how he finds the discipline to write a book every 6 months. And now Harish has done his book, you've done your book. So it's huge inspiration for me. I'm going to work on mine. And I loved reading your book.
Thank you, Saurabh. I'm fairly sure that you're going to write a book. I'm more confident than anybody else, including you, given that I know you for several years. And before we get initiated into this conversation, first let me thank Thai Global for inviting me for sharing a few thoughts of mine. And I'm more impressed that they could convince Saurabh to come and do the fireside chat with me. Thank you, Saurabh, a gentleman whom I know for several years, who led NASSCOM, who now leads the India Angel Network, an outstanding and thorough person he is. So it's indeed a pleasure for me to be with you this evening, Saurabh.
No, there's no way I wouldn't be here. I actually had declined coming here, and then they called me and said, no, I have to have a conversation with you. So
Thank
I'm
you.
here. So, Mohan, let me start by saying, look, when we both started our first companies at the same time, around the same time. So when I did my first startup in '89, left my job running the Tata Unisys joint venture, it took me 1 year to get a license. No venture capital, no angel investors, no debt, $8 if you went abroad, that's all you could take with you, no telecom. That was the environment. And that's the environment in which we all built, successful companies. So I feel really good for today's entrepreneurs when I see the ecosystem that we now have in place. So let me ask you your first question. What are your thoughts, your perspectives, your views on what has changed since when you started your company in 1891, right?
Yes,
Couple of years.
91.
And today, as we sit here.
Thank you, Saurabh, for that question. What you said is right. We almost started in the same period. I wrote the story in my book too. There's an interesting story about the license Raj, which happened, of course, just before I started the company. Is that in those good old days of late 80s and early 90s, there still used to be a department called DGTD, Director General of Technology Development. It was absolute misnomer for what they used to do. And what they were doing were giving license to people. That's what they did in Delhi. So people like me had to travel all the way from Hyderabad to get some of these licenses signed. And we used to wait for the Babuji to see you. And outside the Babuji's cabin, there used to be 2 chairs. One with 4 legs, and the other used to be 3 legs. The 4-leg chair used to be reserved for the peon of the office. The 3-leg chair used to be for the visitor. So you had the first daunting task in balancing yourself and sitting on a 3-leg chair. The second one, which was the more difficult one, not demeaning anything on the peon, is that he used to smoke something called a BD. I don't know whether many of you are familiar with it. It's rolled tendu leaf, absolutely nauseating. That was the regime when, Saurabh and I started companies. Enormous amount of transformation that happened. Saurabh mentioned about, the license Raj. Then he also talked about venture capital. I started off in 1991 with a relationship with IDBI Venture Capital, it was called. And the terms that I got, a number of people used to laugh at me and say, Mohan, you didn't get venture capital. What you got was vulture capital. There's no denying that it was 1 to 5 times I leveraged myself, but the terms I got, 21% interest on debt. There used to be a 6% royalty on my sales. There used to be a flooring but no ceiling. So from that, I think the transformation has been tremendous, Saurabh. Today, money is chasing people. I think if you look at the number of changes that have happened, you've seen ease of doing business has gone several notches up. Actually, I used to be very intensely involved in the Hyderabad Software Exporters Association. The unwritten rule that used to be there between the director of STPI and me was that any document that went to him had to be returned within 48 hours. Otherwise, I would assume that it was all approved. And he used to stand by that particular commitment. That's the speed at which the liberalization came into this country, and people, the entrepreneurs, then definitely made sure the globalization also became their accessibility. The second thing that we believe is that not only the bureaucracy has disappeared, but there's so much amount of money that's available. For a good project, even today, several people say, Mohan, the valuations have come down, money has dried up. Not necessarily true. I keep saying there's plenty of money so long as you have a good idea. So I think it's like day and night, Saurabh, between what was in the past and what it is today. So people are very fortunate. I think I talked about it yesterday. Shantanu Narayan also said, timing could not be any better than what it is right now in terms of starting up companies. But he talked about technology. But in addition to technology, what I supplemented it was by saying that you also have the government, which is definitely promoting startups. There's Startup India, Stand Up India. There's so many initiatives that go on. Or the ease of doing business, more amount of innovation, the ecosystem that got created. All these make me believe that time cannot be any better than what it is today.
In fact, I'll add one more piece, which is media. Today, media celebrates entrepreneurs. When we started out,
Absolutely.
media only talked about Tatas, Birlas, and Ambanis and all the rest. So I think that's changed. We almost have something akin to the Silicon Valley pecking order, where entrepreneurs are celebrated, capital is available, media is after you. It's aspirational.
Absolutely.
When we did it, it wasn't. So I should ask you a question leading to that. When I was looking to do the startup, everybody discouraged me. My wife, my family, everybody said, no, 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 no. We don't come from Singhanias and Birla families. We know nothing about business. Hey, you have a great job. We're doing fine. Why do you want to do this stupid thing? So I look back and I realize it was very risky, but thank God I did do it. So let me ask you, and I waited very long. I did mine in 89, yours in 91.
Yes.
Maybe there is a few years of gap between us, not a lot. What made you wait so late?
Well, a couple of things, Saurabh. I think there is 2 years difference between when you started and when I started. But there was a major event that happened in those 2 years. That's when P.V. Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh was the Finance Minister. They really embarked on this strategy of liberalizing this economy. And I think that made a big difference in terms of giving confidence for startups at that point of time, including mine. But the background you described right now, Saurabh, was no different from me either. Everybody thought this was a big, risky proposition. I am very proud of my background. I came from a middle-class background. My father was a police officer. My mother was a homemaker. And I also, like Saurabh, had a fairly good role as a CEO of a computer system integration company called OMC Computers, which at one point of time was the top 5. And I was a CEO for 10 years. So obviously, everybody was very reluctant, hesitant to encourage me. But I said that was also the time when I also turned 40. So therefore, that I somehow, in my mindset, I graded myself, saying that this is the last chance for you. And I took the risk. But what I did well, and I feel very proud about it, is that 18 years of professional experience working in the corporate world, I made sure I got all that experience that was required in making sure that I could definitely build on it to become a successful entrepreneur. So therefore, do not think that, if you don't have an opportunity right now, it's going to be very disappointing. Work towards that opportunity. It might smile back at you a year from now, 10 years from now, it doesn't matter. But don't lose your focus of becoming an entrepreneur. That's the message.
And I would second that, because for me it was something similar. I said to myself, look, I'm 40. I'm running Tata Unisys. one-third of the software industry, 40% was
Yes.
TCS. I said, you know, what am I going to do for the next 20 years? Same job. I'll drive here, I'll drive back. I mean, there's nothing else. And that's what said to me, listen, it's about time, I better take that risk. So the one lesson is never too late. If you think it's time, if you think you have a good idea, just do it.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you something else. You know, starting up is one piece. It's not easy taking the decision, taking the risk. Of course, today it's much easier because you are funded. I started with 11 lakhs. I don't know what you started with.
20 lakhs.
Very little money. But talk to me a little bit about scaling, because there's a lot of difference between starting out and getting to your destination. And the majority of a large number of startups just don't recognize the things they need to do to be able to scale. It's not, take the example of cricket. Playing the first 2 or 3 overs isn't enough. There's a middle overs. You know, there's a lot of stuff to do. And you did very successful scaling of your company. So talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Saurabh. What you said is right. Getting your idea straightened out is the first step. And what are the first go-to-market service offering I had with me was providing the digitization as a service, which primarily meant take the paper maps, convert them into digital content, which is absolute with integrity in terms of the accuracies and the databases associated with it. So the first step for us was to make sure we got the quality right, we got on-time delivery at an affordable cost. These are the 3 things. There's an absolute hygiene, of course, but it took at least the first 1.5 years for us to get this straightened out. We got quality, cost, and affordable price. These are the 3 things. Then came the next challenge. We're about 200 people. I saw opportunities being about 2,000 people thereafter. We had to scale to that level. And what did we put as a strategy? It was simple. All of you will remember, PPT. And my strategy was called dot PPT. You take a triangle. The PPT was P, P, and T. The first P was for people. The second P was for processes. And the third T, as it comes, is 3 Ts, is tools, technology, and training. And the dot at the center of the triangle was all about customer centricity. So you have that customer centricity. We are absolutely paranoid about customers. Our history says 99% of the time, once customer walked in, we had to walk out. We never had a customer walking out on us. That's the passion with which we made sure year after year, we delivered value to our customers. We then said, make sure that you recruit, retain, reward, retrain people. That's the people strategy. We said, we need to put the best of processes in place, whether it was Six Sigma or it is the SEI, CII, level 5 certifications, any of those, all the processes are under place, and use the right tools and associated with technology by training the people thereafter. So it's this strategy, Saurabh, which made sure effortlessly, with no exaggeration, I became, from a 200 people company, we grew to be a 2,000 people company in 18 months thereafter. And therefore, the emphasis is making sure that you have your processes in place to get to that level of scaling.
So I'd maybe just take a second out for all of you who are doing startups now or looking to do. There's some learnings that in some ways we had. Even if the environment isn't perfect, you can do it. We did it. I mean, when Harish and I and others were co-founding NASCOM in '88, this was a $50 million industry. 55, I think.
Absolutely.
It's $250 billion, built under very adverse circumstances. None of us had any money. 20 lakhs, 11 lakhs, nobody had money. Yet we went ahead and did it. Not all of us started when we were in school. I was 40. Must be similar.
40,
when he did it, still built something on scale. I would add one more piece when you do the scaling. is really the importance of ethics
Yeah.
in how you build your company. If you don't build that right, you will actually not scale. No matter what you do, your structure is weak and it'll fail. And if you look at the entire IT service industry, barring not even a handful, you'll find almost very rare examples of companies that actually haven't lived with great corporate governance, scaling, and built a reputation. And it pains me a lot, therefore, honestly, when I read about many founders today who are in fact falling, I would say, far short of being truly, truly ethical in that. So let me actually go back to some of the things that you've written there as well. Uh, all, all companies have some specific USPs on which they built their success. If I look at mine was specific. I will choose initially to go not the whole globe, just the UK market, within UK, financial sector, within financial sector, not on-site, offshore projects, and I'll be the first to get quality certification. Narrow definition to succeed. In Scient, what would you say with your top 2, 3 real differentiators on what did you build your success?
I think there are about 3 things that I would say. We definitely had the focus. I started off in 1991 saying that I need to build an engineering services company. Success did not come so easily for me. It was too early. We were ahead of the market at that point of time. So we waited patiently till 2000 before we got the success. But thereafter, if you look at it, 3 things I'll call out is our continuous endeavor to in search of excellence, continuously saying, this cannot be the best. There's something better than this. So our ability to go ahead and continuously improve ourselves is one thing which made a distinctive difference for us. And the second one, which I called out even earlier, is our being paranoid about our customer happiness. And what we have seen is that we actually do our customer satisfaction thrice over. There's something called a transaction MFA, a periodic MFA, a third-party MFA, and result is that you're constantly delighting the customer all along. And the third one, what you called out earlier, Saurabh, is about ethics, which I call it as values. To us, the foundation was values, and we actually use this acronym called Values First, FIRST, fairness, integrity, respect, transparency, and sincerity. And these are the 5 values which made a big difference to us. And we also believe that on this foundation, there are 4 pillars which made the company absolutely stable. The 4 pillars being our customers, our investors, our employees, and the society. And to us, these 4 pillars are extremely important, equitable to all these 4 pillars. I think these are the ones which made us successful, Saurabh.
Oh, so I noticed we're out of town. Let me do just one quick question. Since I chose to reinvent my career, and after the 3rd startup, I decided to go actually into not running companies, but mentoring and investing in startups. And that's why we created the Indian Angel Network and then the VC Fund, and before that, the Infinity Fund. And my learnings from, or at least experience from entrepreneurs today, is fundamentally, at the time we started, the industry was so small, we didn't dream ambitiously enough in the India of that time. And I find that today's founders are dreaming big, and I think that is wonderful. I find they're also willing to take much more risk because capital is available. And that's again very good because they can actually scale. I do find that we were much more sticklers on values
Absolutely.
than everybody I meet. Uh, I find many of the youngsters I meet to be a bit bratty, but I'm not saying it in the wrong way because I think that's fine because they're not willing to accept any nonsense.
Sure.
We used to be very careful about talking back and all the rest. But overall, they're starting with a lot more self-confidence on being able to conquer the world than we did. Because when we started, India was a loser country. Now we're the fourth largest economy. You do a lot of mentoring too.
Yes.
What are you seeing?
Very similar thoughts I have, Saurabh. I think one other thing that I like to call out is even the society has been very supportive. One of the things that we found in the generation that we were, once you lose something, you were branded as a loser. There's nothing that was left behind at that point of time. Yep. Whereas comparatively speaking at this juncture, what we have seen is the tolerance to failure also has increased quite a bit. So as I keep saying that, you celebrate losses, but you celebrate learnings from losses. That's what it is. So I think definitely the environment has changed compared to what it was when we were there. And rightly so, I actually even have my tagline which says dreams to $1 billion. I like everybody to dream. This is not the dreaming in the night. Yeah. You daydream. But key thing further is make sure that those dreams are executed flawlessly for you to build a successful company. That with the values as the foundation to it.
So what is your dream for 2047 for India?
I think India will certainly be one of the top 3 economies of the world. And India will be the knowledge capital of the world. I spend a lot of time on education these days. This is my new passion of life. I do, of course, like you, invest, etc. But then not of the scale that you do, Saurabh, much smaller scale. But I spend more time on education. And I feel that, if we get that act right, in making sure the 1.4 billion people or 1.4 billion minds that we have in this nation are properly knowledgeable people they become, then this nation has the ability of becoming knowledge capital of the world. That's my dream.
So my dream is similar to yours. My dream is that by 2047, we have an outstanding chance of becoming the global center for innovation. It's for us to blow it. And before we end, my last question to you is, if you were to do a startup again today, what would that be?
Well, probably I'm too old to do a startup now, Saurabh. But if I were to give a chance, it has to be in technology. And I think, that's, if you look at those 4 forces which are working, computers, sensors, data, and finally algorithms, centered around that, and especially the ones which will have enormous amount of local impact is the one that I will do.
Very similar. I think we're now much more focused on impact and not so much on the financial return. Then really, in my case, because I sort of switched from building companies into trying to do startup of institutions, if I was to do another one today, that would be a think tank. And a think tank to basically chart our map as to how we become number 1. Because I think if I look back in where we were 5,000 years ago, I think it'd be good for us to get there within 100 years of independence. Okay, with that, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Saurabh. It's been a great conversation with you.
Always a pleasure, and thank you very much for all of you.